at introduction to data privacy. Now, when you hear the word data privacy, there should be one thing that should come to your mind, and that is only personal data. You should not be concerned about any other data. If you are a privacy professional, trust me, you don't have to think about all the data. Any data by which you can just relate a person, that is a personal data. So what is data privacy? So data privacy is basically protection of personal information. When I say protection, it is not only the organization's responsibility. Probably you guys will also play a part, like a user will also play a part in it, like how to give consent to my data, then how I share my data online, and all those things. So in data security, you can't ask organization, hey, you encrypt my data, you anonymize my data, and so on and so forth. But in data privacy, the user has the most of the control. Like you decide whether to give consent to your data or not, whether to erase the data within the system or not. If you want to port the data from one entity to other, you can do that. So it gives you a control. So data privacy also talks about the control. Then comes the governance part. So organization have to make sure that the privacy regulations are adhered by, and at the same time they assign certain people to manage your data within the organization as well. So with that, let me give you one very interesting fact. So if you see this chart, the data generated per day, okay? So let's assume that from the human existence till today, let's assume that 100 GB of data was being produced. Out of that 100 GB of data, the 90 GB has been from last 2 years itself. So you imagine the kind of you know the growth, the exponential growth the data has in today's world. So imagine the kind of opportunities it opens up for the people who deal with data, not only data privacy, analytics, be it any field. So data has become such a big thing. So anything and everything related to data will be a very big opportunity going forward. Trust me on this. Next 10 years will be the boom. So this small fact itself gives you the advent of how big the event of data would be going forward. Now with that, let me give you a quite clear distinction on what is personal data, what is non-personal data. As you can all see on the screen, name, date of birth, your bank details, anything, employee ID, etc., etc. So if I were to give you a definition, any data by which you can relate to a person, by a person I mean a living person, a legal person. If you can relate that data to that person, then it's a personal data. On the contrary, data which are very sensitive to certain organizations, like there will be intellectual property data, then there will be finance data, there will be audit data, etc. So these are very sensitive, and as a part of data security, these data also needs to be secured, but it doesn't fall under the purview of data privacy. So you should have a clear distinction on what your area of scope is. So your area of scope is anything which relates to a person. If any data which is sensitive to the company, even if it's sensitive to the company, but it will not fall, I mean the regulations and all the controls will not be in the purview of that non-personal data, because that bit of data will be handled by information security, or let's say data security team, but it will not be your concern as a privacy professional. Okay, so that's about the data, and this is a small chart which says what's the difference between data privacy and data security. Now, if we talk about data security, which has been in the boom since past 20-30 years, since the dot-com boom. So what I was talking about is I was just giving you the distinction. I was just showing you this chart to give you a distinction on what data security is and what data privacy is. So data security, since last 20 years, we all know it's about protecting the data, be it any data which relates to a company, it's like finance data, personal data, any general data. So it all falls under the scope of security, where you have to ensure the CIA of the data, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. But today we are here to talk about the privacy side. So when you say privacy, it's not data security, which many people generally, which I have seen the trend in the office, that people try to say that data security is what data privacy only. You just have to maintain, but no, it's not about that. So when it comes to data privacy, you have to give certain controls to the user itself, which people generally forget to understand this main concept of the entire data privacy program, that giving a control to a user is very very important. So when we talk about privacy, we need to ensure that if the information is getting collected, then at least we have to inform them via a privacy notice or via a text message saying that so and so information has been captured. We will be using this data for so and so reason, and going forward probably we might be sharing this data with XYZ person. So all this data, which generally in today's age people tend to ignore when it comes to terms and conditions or all that sort of things, but still it's from an organization standpoint, we will be doing our bit of notifying the user that why we were collecting the data and how we will be using the data. Whereas in data security, it's more about, it is a company's obligation. It is, if you don't do data security, probably there will be certain areas where the regulatory applications will be there, but in certain case it is also not ethical if you don't protect the data, right? Like I have come from a background of Tata consultancy services, so for us ethics was the prime aspect in everything. So for them data security was like a natural thing. You are playing with people's data, and if something else, if credit card information gets leaked, like you must have seen in all the news, then it hampers people's mindset as well. So it just, before proceeding, I'll give you a very interesting fact of how data privacy came into existence. First of all, during World War II, after World War II, what the European Commission had decided is all the data needs to be protected. Now they got to know that information leakage was one of the concerns why the war had happened, is what the thought process was during 1950s in the European Parliament. So during that time, they were very stringent on bringing up data privacy as a regulation, so that people, like, controls should be implemented. This was not only about personal data at that time; all the data should be controlled, but specific significance was given to personal data, because if somebody knows that certain military people are present in this location, that location, and if the data is exposed, and there was no governance structure during that time. So European people, what they thought was, it is better that if we give that fundamental right to everyone of privacy. So this is how the existence of data privacy came into picture. So since that time, European regulation has been on stringent on the data privacy side, and that's why we today see GDPR as a very very stringent. Okay, so IP address, it's personal information, because in an organization, for example, let's take a context of an organization, and if you know the IP address, if it's a static IP address, you will be able to identify a person by it. So definitely it falls under personal data category. Second one is PIN code. Once I was reading this interesting case online. It was somewhere in the remotest area of. I think Finland or Sweden, somewhere in the Scandinavian country. And there one lady told the quote that, via PIN code, because she was the only one living in that land. And they were saying that PIN code is my personal information, because via PIN code, I will, like, people are able to identify who the person is. So, I mean, that, I don't know what the ruling of that court was, but that was a very interesting news article I was reading back then. So, people in Europe are very what you say proactive when it comes to data privacy. So we have to be very sure on the context specific age terms as well, because in some places pin code probably can be a personal information, because if you can attach two three things, for example, if a room of six people, if you know certain pin code and if you know their age, so you can identify a person. So I'm just telling from a context specific standpoint. Ideally, pin code is not a personal information, but you have to, while when you are in the privacy journey, you will understand that it is not like a blanket yes or a no when it comes to personal information. You have to see the context in some cases as well. Okay, so let me give you one scenario. Now, when I told system analyst, I told it for a reason, because there are many system analysts present. But what about CFO, or you are just talking on where CFO's data is there. So, who do you think CFO is? It won't be more than two people or more than one people, right? So, what in that case? So, wouldn't it be a personal data then? Don't think from a blanket yes or a no perspective, because that is not the case always. And you think from a contextual perspective. If somebody asks you like, okay, tell me this is yes or no, probably if you are not able to figure out on a blanket yes or, like for example, email address definitely is a personal info. You don't have to cross question over it. But things like this, pin code, designation, IP address, these are certain things which you need to think about. So this, and age, finally the age. So that is the whole purpose of this activity, that I want you guys going forward to think in a context. Like whenever personal data comes, if you are not able to identify, just think from a context, or just try to cross question to your seniors or to your colleagues if you are not able to understand a personal information. So that was the whole purpose of this activity. Okay. Okay, so with that, this was the introduction on data privacy. Let's go to the regulations. Okay, so let's look at a few of the regulations. I got this chart online. You can see the source as well. It was a very interesting chart. Now, after the birth of GDPR, suddenly everyone realized, oh, data privacy is going to be a big thing. So let's bring it. Even country, the developing countries like Brazil has their own data privacy law, which is also incomparable with GDPR, a very good law. So if I were to talk about data privacy since the beginning, as I told, after World War II, EU was the first one to think about right of privacy and all those fundamental rights given to the human. And after that, slowly it started picking up. So EU GDPR currently has the most stringent data privacy law. When I say most stringent, it's not only in terms of controls but also in terms of penalties. Like, I'm not sure if you guys have heard or not, but let me just phrase it again. So in Europe, if you are found guilty of any data privacy charges, then in that case you either have to pay up to 2 to 4 million of 4 million euros, or no, 2 to 4% I think of the global turnover, or 20 million euros. This is what the context is in GDPR. So that also forms a major thing in making that law a very stringent law, because currently if you see from an Indian market standpoint, our people here are not that developed from a data privacy sense as of today, is what I would say. As of today, we are very good in cyber security, we are very good in the other things, but data privacy is an emerging market. But in Europe, this has been since past 70-80 years. So those people know the value of privacy, and for them, even if if we find this number a very big number, for them they can understand this context of the numbers because they have been in this field. So that is why, so we can't just say get up and say that India has very less privacy penalties and compared to Europe, but there is no comparison at all in this case. So Europe was the first one. Now, after the famous Brexit, you all know that after UK exiting the European Union, UK also has
their own GDPR law, which is same as EU. There is nothing difference. In fact, you know what? These days, I'm sure you must be seeing all those cookie banners on the website, right? Those annoying cookie banners. Unless you allow or decline, you are not able to access. Few of them are very, very irritating. So, what EU law is proposing right now in the new bill is that there is no need for the cookie part. Eh, Is what I mean. It's still in the draft stage. This is what the comment has come from the industry. Like they have taken certain industry inputs and they felt that it is not empowering anything to the user, is what they have seen. So I'm just giving you one of the updates on the current thing. India's personal data protection bill, PDPB, you know, it was there in 2021. Even when I was working in TCS, I gladly remember that our CIO had got one notification from the ministry to review the personal data protection, because that time it was still in the draft stage, and I'm sure many big companies had were given the opportunity to review because they were in the market since long. Infosys, TCS, Tech Mahindra, L&T, or they were from the tech side. These companies were chosen ones. I am sure other firms like Consult, EY, and all, they were also given this opportunity to review the bill. So what we had done that time is we had reviewed the bill. That it was long back in I think 2017, 18 or something, and we gave our feedback over that raw regulation. And after that we have seen it evolved, so it makes me really happy to be part of that. It's playing a very very small role in that journey, but yeah, it was a good experience for me. So India's data protection bill, it came, then it dropped, then it came again. Now I think it will be built in this monsoon. They are going to declare that it will be official, is what I have been hearing. Not sure, but yes, once this data protection thing comes, then that will be a boom by itself. I'm sure a lot of companies in India have understand the the value of data privacy, because I have seen now taking people data privacy more seriously. I have seen so many openings. I get reached out like every 2 weeks by someone like regarding data privacy. If not me, they want the contacts and so on and so forth. So in India, yes, the MNCs have tried starting to adopt the perspective of the global regulation. So they are on board. Now for the small companies, the big changes will be for the smaller companies who have not even thought about it. So there you guys will be the ones who will do all the decision making, which I told in the very starting of the session, that the decision making is the best part of this particular job. So you have to think about the entire process, what the data privacy will, what regulations first of all will be applicable to us. After that, what processes can be built around, what are the current controls, what will be the things which will go around, and so on and so on. So SMEs will be a very, very big market, I feel, going forward in India once this bill passes. And now I currently work in the Middle East. Okay, so in Middle East, I work in Dubai, and here GCC regulation, there in Bahrain there was a established PDPL, personal data protection law. uh, After that, slowly all the countries, Qatar, Oman, Saudi, and these people started taking up their own law. I mean, the reason for GCC having data privacy, because they are thinking from a 50 and a 70 years perspective, because they want people to come here and they want all the standards which are provided by the Western, by the Asian countries. So they want to make sure that everybody here are happy and everything is being, done legally, which is like done globally across the globe. So yeah, that is where the GCC is heading. So they also have a very very strong market in data privacy. I know, like Saudi Arabia currently is hiring data privacy professional like anything, because they have, I think, 3 or 4 months back they have released the law, and the one which has came live, and I think 6 months is what is given to them to comply to that law. So everybody is running behind data privacy professional there. So yes, Saudi Arabia is a big market, and in South Africa also it was there since quite some time, since I know. Even smaller countries like Vietnam, Singapore, they have. Singapore still is a financial center. It has a good data privacy law, but communist countries like China and Vietnam also identifies the need of data privacy. And of course, US, there's a whole complete different story on the US. Each 50 states have their own regulations around data privacy. So that will be some other another 2 hours of discussion just to talk on the US data privacy front. So, okay, let me just take you to the most important slide of today, which is the data privacy framework. Okay, there are a lot of standards available out there, but this one is my personal favorite, which I use and I have been using this in four companies, and it has worked and it has done wonders for me. So yeah, I would definitely recommend. This one is what I say, or what it is called in the framework is build, implement, demonstrate. Okay, simple. You build it, you implement it, and you demonstrate it. Now, let's take each block one by one. Okay, when I say build, what am I building here? I'm building a data privacy program, correct? I'm building a data privacy program. So, from that perspective, first thing I will do is I'll define my scope. As simple as that. Define my scope. Now, scope will be different for an MNC company. Scope will be different for an SME, which is locally operating. Correct. So, understanding which regulations are applicable to is very, very important. First of all, on the contrary, you also need to understand who are your customers, who are you targeting, and who are your contractors or the third party vendors you are associated with, because that also is not only about the regulation, but these three entities play a major role in deciding what the scope will be. Because if you say, if you are locally operated here and on your website you are targeting European customers, then GDPR will be applicable, even in fact if you are present in India. So you should understand this scope is, it's very, very important to understand all these things. Second is personal data discovery. Before personal data discovery, what I personally do when I enter any organization is I first try to speak to the key stakeholder that boss, just give me a list of personal information which you guys have already identified, personal or personal and sensitive personal information. Now, if those people have not already identified, then this becomes my prime project for the first month, or let's say first 2 weeks, to identify. Because first of all, you will have to talk to a lot of teams, database administrators, digital team, information security, IT, and all those people who are the custodian of data. You need to go there. You need to first identify, because see, going forward, this build phase will be more about building, like the name suggests, it will be building all the processes around of the data privacy, right? So when I say that, the most important thing to understand is what you are protecting. I mean, like if let's say there is an HR department and there is a marketing department. If in the marketing department, in a hypothetical case, let's say personal data is not there. Okay, hypothetical. I mean, definitely there will be, but if you have that clear segregation that okay, this department is doesn't have, so you don't have to worry about implementing controls there, right? So this will make your life easy, basically, that okay, personal information is not there, and in the marketing department, so we don't have to touch it, simple as that. So first try to get that segregation, the personal data, sensitive personal data. Okay, so before going forward, just a quick roundabout, I didn't give you much detail on sensitive personal. So sensitive personal data is any data, if it gets leaked, it causes a considerable harm to an individual. This is what a a bookish definition says. It causes a considerable harm. For example, if my religious beliefs are known to you guys, well, probably I might not want that, because I might think that what I will be thought of and all those things. So that will come to my mind. It'll hamper my emotions and all those. So sensitive personal data has their own set of controls. We have to deal sensitive personal data very, very carefully. Probably whenever I do a data privacy assessment, for me, touching sensitive personal data is the first thing. Understanding the controls and doing, first priority. It's on my priority list. As simple as that. Sensitive personal data you need to address first. So there will be list of, because some organization, health data for example is a sensitive personal data. You need to take care of the race. Then I think criminal records, because a lot of companies these days do background check and all, right? So certain individuals might not be comfortable doing it, or they might have certain XYZ record. I don't know for what reason, but yeah, probably they might have. So they wouldn't want everybody to know. So you as a privacy professional, your duty is to go to HR and make sure that all such data, or whichever department, not only HR, and make sure that the controls are built. Okay, so first is defining scope, understanding your key stakeholders, like who will be the vendor, where they are sitting, who will be the customer, where they are sitting, employees, and all this. After that, identifying personal information and sensitive personal information within the organization. Then comes the discovery part. Okay, now personal data discovery, it's a very interesting topic. I mean, the companies who have a lot of cash in hand, they will definitely deploy good tools to crawl their database through a external system. But companies like SME, I mean, they probably wouldn't have that much of a favor on data privacy. So one guy doing all the things. Like I was that one guy for quite some time now. 3 4 years I've been the one guy. Good that now I have the team. But yeah, for these 3 4 years I had been doing data discovery manually. Now manually is go to the stakeholder, you know, talk to the talk to them, and make them first understand what is data privacy, make all those things work around you, and then they will probably say. So there is a drawback also to this, but probably there might also be a positive side. So drawback is that all the data that you might get will be based on the knowledge of that particular stakeholder, right? I mean, if let's say he or she had joined 2 years before, and before that one guy was there for 10 years, let's say. So that 10-year guy might know certain data where this 2 year guy might not know, for example, right? So in that case, you will be not reaching to the ex-employee, correct? You will be no reaching to the this ones only. So probably you might not get the complete picture. So that is a drawback. On the contrary, they might able to show you data which is there on an unstructured system, like which the crawler cannot find online. Even if you are spending $1 million, doesn't mean that the system will guarantee you everything, right? So probably they might tell you that certain employees just leave their company, or email transcripts on the printer, or anything. I mean, it can be any varied reasons. So yes, drawback to it, but prepare yourself from a manual standpoint, because not every company has a big budget to identify and discover personal data online. Um, after identifying the PI SPI, you have to discover the data. You have to go talk and talk to the people and make it work. So a list of personal information, like like it's a out of, let's say, your organization store 100 attributes. Okay, out of that 30 is recognized by the organization as personal data. Like in the example with the quick fire round that we did, we saw, right, that IP address can be a personal data, is a personal data, pin code designation might be or might not be. So it depends on an organizational context. You need to understand that. So you first identify that data. Now, in the personal data discovery, what you do is you go and find out the system where this particular data is located. So It can be in my database, it can be on my printers, on the paper, it can be on any XYZ file with the vendors, with the ex-employees, anyone. You just need to have the overview that you first personal data discovery is finding, like taking those list of 30 attributes with you, going to each stakeholder and seeing whether okay, this data you have, this data you have, this. So that's the prime difference. It is a responsibility of a DPO to make the other people understand that it is their responsibility to, tell us what data you hold. So I would put it in that way. So your responsibility is to find proper people within the organization, proper liaison within the organization, and you deal with them on a daily basis. So what I would say that you should have a plan with you first of all. That when you go to them and you ask what personal data, I mean, why will they tell you that what data you know they are holding? When it comes to data privacy, the main uh, challenge for me is not the regulations or not the processes and all. It's the change management. Is the change management which is the most difficult part. So it's on you how you convince the people that why first of all you are doing what you are doing. And because see, in an SME nobody will gonna help you unless it's a big conglomerate and the things are running from top to bottom approach. Then yeah, you can say, oh, it is coming from compliance and we need to do. But I go with an approach that change management, I have to do everything from ground up. So what I do is I make them understand that okay, these are the obligations which you are, and probably these might be the things which we might face if this data gets exposed. So my responsibility here is to make them understand that okay, what data you hold, you let me know, and I will try to explain them the reason behind it. Now it is there obviously because they have access to the systems, they will be responsible to identify the data within their system. You can't just go, you can go and write the code as my SQL code and find the data correct. So your work is where you have to convince the people within the organization. So that is your work. So the main thing they will do, but it probably you can route it via compliance, or you can route it via HR, whomsoever you fit deem is a powerful legal team is there in an organization. So on and so forth. Okay. So when it comes to procedures, first of all, after you have found what kind of data where it is presented, you know what policies to make, because there will be list of policies. If you go online, just enter GDPR list of policies, you will get the list. Okay, you know which policies to write. I mean, policies are the first what you say things that the regulators would check, because unless it's written, how would you say that it's implemented by organization, right? So policy is the first thing that those people check, that okay, you have put certain controls. Now let me see the policy. So you need to have policies and guidelines in place, stating that what it is, and what is not. Privacy by design, on the contrary, is a very good concept which was coined by and in the Canada by Dr. Anne. So what her concept was that you embed the design of privacy from the beginning. When I say beginning, now there is a life cycle for everything. Like if you take a software, then software has its own life cycle, like requirement gathering, then doing the research, then implementing, doing the testing, and then deploying. So if you take a software perspective on privacy by design, then what Dr. N said, that privacy by design is a concept which you shouldn't think after testing phase or after the deployment phase, that okay, now since the product is ready, let me implement. No, she says that you should think of privacy from the beginning. When I say beginning, from a requirement gathering phase itself or from the design phase itself, you design the system in such a way that privacy is embedded. When I now, for example, let me give you a live example. Like uh, if there is one app, okay, Apple has done a very good job in it. Whenever you are downloading an app, and if you, let's say, if you are given the mm, option to log in by an Apple ID. So there is two options: share your email address and hide your email address. So by default, it has selected hide as a option. Okay, so it's this is called privacy by design. So in the design itself, they are saying that we will hide your data unless you select otherwise. So think from that perspective, like be it any process, any software development, any web development, you have to think from that perspective. So there will be a lot of guidelines going forward. So this all things we are covering in our 32-hour section, which in detail, where each processes are explained in detail, there are case studies behind it and all those things. Then choice and consent, you need to build a very good consent management system within the company. Now not all companies will, like I said, give you budget to have buy a consent management platform. So you need to devise a strategy on how you will be taking the consent from the end user, and probably who are the stakeholders you will be reaching out. So you should be ready with all those lists. So for example, if I'm in a company and a request is coming to me that okay, delete my data, if I don't have a tool, what will I do? So unless I have a guideline or I have right set of data with me, I can't proceed. Now in that case, what I as a privacy professional would do is, I would know, like I said, list of personal sensitive personal data from his or her request. I will understand that okay, out of the 10 attributes, 4 attributes are personal. So let's focus on here because GDPR will be applicable only to personal, or any regulation will be applicable to personal information. Then I will have the mapping that okay, if it's health data, I know it is coming from the insurance team. If it's criminal data, it is coming from the HR team. Okay, I will go I will map that department mapping to the uh, to our personal information. So that is why this personal data discovery is very important. And once that is there, then I will go and ask them, and I will CC the compliance, CC the legal, that okay, this needs to be deleted because since we are no longer, this XYZ person is no longer with us since past 3 years, he has requested to delete the data, and they have to obey it within a specified timeline. Can be 30 days, 45 days, whatever. Some regulations say 30 days, like GDPR. Some say probably can take up to 3 months as well. Okay, so it depends on the context. But this is the case. So you need to have build that process. Now, if you don't have the tool, you should have all these point of contacts. You should have all the people. You should have the form that how you will. You don't have to think on the last stage. So design think of all these things on a. What I do is like my policy of implementing things is, after I identify PI and SPI data, and I do the personal data discovery, I do the education and training because all the people in the organization should know what is coming in their way. So that is my approach. We will see this in more detail in the next slide. It's a DPO activity slide, so we'll discuss that in more detail. This is just to this slide was just to give you an overview. So probably I've oversaid it, but okay, let me complete it. Okay, the next is a right of data subject. You need to understand first of all what are the rights of data subject. Each regulation has their own set of rights, and more or less they are 80 to 90% similar. Probably one or two will be an additional one. So that is your responsibility as a privacy professional to understand this. Okay, now rights can be um, right to inform, right to give access. For example, I as a data subject should have access to my personal information. I should as a data subject ask you to delete my data. So all these rights needs to be there, and there should be process around it. When I say process, for example, when a complaint comes to a data privacy officer that okay, can you please give me access on my data, then you should have a DSR process in place. When I say DSR process, it means you need to know how in consent, the right set of stakeholder whom to approach. If the data is related to marketing, you should know at that point that okay, this is related to marketing, I should go and approach them, and they might help me. So you should have that mapping. So this mapping will be done in a data inventory exercise. Correct. So this is about the right of data subject. Then we have risk assessments. Risk assessments, like you must be so those who are familiar with privacy terminology. DPIA is one of the term, Data Protection Impact Assessment, which is the regulation, which is a term coined in GDPR itself. So DPIA, you need to do the DPIA activity where you need to understand what risks are present for the data subject when it comes to privacy. So if there is a high risk associated, then a DPIA needs to be done, and or or a generic, readiness assessment can be one of your activity going forward, that you just see how well organized your organization is and what gaps are present in your organization. So risk assessment will be part of your build stage. Data mapping is a very very interesting exercise. Again, say that the organization won't have budget, so be ready to make your own data map in the Excel sheet, which I've been doing. And it's a very interesting exercise actually, because in the data inventory phase, where the records of processing activities, what they call the data inventory, ROPA is what, records of processing activity. There we collect what data is there with each process, for what purpose, what is the security around it, what is the incoming data source, what is the outgoing path of the data, etc., etc. So via that data inventory sheet, no, we create a data mapping sheet, which will help us to get the flow of the data within the organization. So that is a very very important step, because if you know this data mapping, no, your DSR and your consent becomes very easy, because okay, this map is ready with you in front of you in the Excel. Okay, I'm getting a request from a marketing department, so you know where to flow. So very very important. And last but not the least, in the build phase is the breach management. Okay, so breach management is, first of all, you should have a breach management plan. And when I say plan, this plan should be approved by the respective authority, like your CEO or your chief risk officer, or someone of the authority. They should have the plan ready, because you will determine what first of all constitutes a breach to you. Then you will have a breach form, wherein, if for example employee identifies a breach, then the form should be there and ready. That in that form, things like what, nature of the breach, type of data involved, stake like people who are affected by this breach, regulatory impacts. So all these things needs to be ready with you. So that will be part of your breach management. So you are building right now, right? So you're building all the processes. So these things will be very very helpful. Then we have implementation guidance, that you maintain the governance structure. Okay, so when I say this governance structure, what I have applied in the organization is, whenever I go, I am the lone ranger, I am the one man army, so I have to manage. On the most of the cases, I was the alone guy until I recently have got a team. Identify stakeholders, like within finance, probably a budget controller or someone whom who has an influence in their department, is what I would say. Who has influence in their department, probably that will be a very very right person to go. Just don't go for the designation that in the finance CFO will be the top. Probably the chief controller or the other audit guy in the finance department might have a better control of the entire department. So approach them, make them your privacy liaison. When I say privacy liaison, I make sure that going forward, if anything I have to get done from that department, no, I'll only approach to the liaison, and that those person, they get it done. So this is the approach generally in a smaller firms. Even in the bigger firms, it's approached that way. You don't need to talk with the end database administrator to get the data right. You won't do that. For, if let's say there are 1,000 employees, you won't know everyone. So identify this liaison from each department. First of all, get the department list, get the org chart. Okay, then let's and keep one backup liaison as well if the main ones are not present. So I always generally appoint one primary and secondary. So this is my approach, personal approach. And in this, it's very helpful, because I choose the people on whom the department relies on, looks forward, and all those things. I, I try to gauge these factors before making someone a liaison, and then I probably tell them that these are the things, and going forward we will be doing this, and this is how I maintain all the things. And then having the privacy notice is also very important, because people generally, what I have seen is, they tend to neglect this fact, because privacy notice is a very powerful tool, because it helps you. Because tomorrow if there is any legal obligation, this privacy notice might help you, because you will be very very explicitly stating to the people what kind of data you are taking, why you are taking, how long you took, and all those things, right? So this privacy notice will contain all these details, and probably data subject might have missed or whatever. It's not that we are trying to win a case here or someone something of that sort, but being vigilant since day one is our priority as a privacy professional. Like, you shouldn't think that okay, data subject in probably Asian countries don't care that much as in European. Don't think from that perspective. As a privacy professional, I would always recommend that think that from your end, all the necessary things you are doing. Okay, you don't have to worry then what the other part is. So privacy notice is a very important part of it. And when it comes to demonstration, monitoring and assurance, so all the privacy program needs to be monitored. Now, for example, education and awareness. If we talk about how many people are trained, then in consent, how many requests you are getting, how many consent requests you are getting in a month. Data mapping, are all the data mapping exercises complete? Which are the completed processes in data inventory, so on and so forth. So monitoring gives you an overview, like in your monthly meet with the top executives. Probably this is the only thing that they see. They won't see your entire uh, program, right? So monitoring assurance, it's a very good. And finally, be prepared for the audit. I mean, if not external, at least as a privacy professional, you try to do an internal audit, get an approval, and you say that okay, I will be after XYZ year, give them like a 3 or 6 months time or a 1 year time, and tell them that after 1 year we'll be doing data processing. I mean, it's not like something that you will be giving NC and all, but I mean, you can, of course, but it's more about to know where your organization gaps are and to fulfill it. So that you need, and because these cases, no, data privacy audit, privacy notices, these are seen by the regulators. Okay, so when if God forbid something happens, like some breach happens, and you are a privacy professional, and you have missed on all these things, um, then the blame will be like, why did you do it and all those things. See, the regulators won't catch data privacy officer as an offender. Okay, let me be very clear on that. Because it's a joint collaboration of the organization. Organization needs to empower the privacy professional. If it's a DPO, as per GDPR regulation, if you see, or any regulation, they should be ones reporting to the highest authority. It's not like I should either report to the CXOs or the board members, is what the regulation says generally. But currently that trend, I wouldn't say it's 100% there, but yeah. So it's on the empowerment because as a person with a 3 year experience probably might not have that influence. So and data privacy is not something that people nowadays what do you say, see as a what is bright role, but it is going to be a bright role, and which the organization started to identify. Because I myself have seen in my career that how important I have become within 3 years, so I could definitely relate to it. So this is the build, implement, and demonstrate framework, which I have followed in 4 different industries, not only organization, industries, like insurance, like in oil and gas, in banking and finance, and all those media companies. I have implemented and it works very fine. So we will be discussing the DPO activities. So what do I generally do, or what does a privacy professional generally do in a day-to-day life? Oh, my first thing I do is contract reviews. Lot of contract reviews I do. So when I talk about contract reviews, it's like ad hoc basis contract. Like, I see the vendor agreements. I check the data processing agreement. For DPA is a term again coined in data privacy itself. So in data processing agreement, you need to ensure that vendor is compliant to all the privacy clauses. So whenever there is a main agreement, there is a data processing agreement attached to it. Nowadays, that's the trend which I have seen after 2018. So so data processing agreement. What I do is, I generally, there are a lot of vendors which comes and goes in a organization cycle, right? So making sure that I speak to the vendors, I negotiate the terms, because there might be some case where uh, G, a vendor is coming from a European background and they are saying we are GDPR compliant, and so we here sitting here in let's say India, we can't say that we will also be 100% GDPR compliant. We'll ask them, we'll make them negotiate that okay, give us the exact what you say grounds or exact implications, or the exact obligations which we need to follow. We can't just come to me and say that you need to be 100% GDPR compliant. I mean, that is just not possible because my companies don't have that, first of all, manpower and resources to deal with it. So my day-to-day activity is to negotiate with all the people from all across the vendor line to see how the contracts are getting covered and all those things. So I have added standard contractual clause here. So SCCs are the ones which are lot been talked about since 2021. After the the GDPR had released it. So we SCCs, it's like a data processing agreement itself, but there are a lot of clauses to it, and understand in depth what it is and all whatnot. So and we are we are having a a full graded course which talks about the standard contractual clauses. So uh, we'll discuss that in the last, but all these topics of standard contractual clauses, binding corporate rules, and etc., it's covered in depth with case studies in that. Okay, so standard contractual clause, to just to give you a blanket definition, it's more about the data processing agreement, but you are ensuring that you are complying to the data processing authorities of GDPR. Binding corporate rules is something different. So if I am a conglomerate, I am operating in let's say Europe, Asia, and Africa. Okay, so what GDPR says is probably if you are following binding corporate rules, so binding corporate rules get audited by the regulatory authorities, and if they find that okay, the BCR, the binding corporate rules, are in line with the GDPR requirement, they approve. So if they approve, what the company get the added advantages, they can freely flow the data within Asia, Africa, and Europe. They don't have to do the internal things. So, for example, there is a data residency thing in Europe that data cannot move out of Europe unless there are health data. If it's really necessary, it has to go via a regulatory authority and all those things. So they generally skip this line because government has given them BCR approval. So that is how it works. And then there are various privacy related clauses which I see. So that's on the contract reviews. Then training and LMS. Currently, I'm working on a LMS content for my organization, and we are updating. I mean, it's more of an updation. So there is already a content present, but I'm trying to bring in a flavor of newness into it. So designing all these things of training. Then what my this mandatory training versus role based, this is my approach. Okay? So how this is how I follow in the organization. What I do is I generally, as per regulation, there is a technical and organizational measure which you have to follow, right? Now in that uh, mandatory, there is, what I do is 30 minutes mandatory training to everyone in the organization, wherein I talk about the basics of data privacy, employee do's and don'ts, and all those things. Either it's a video or I give in person or whatever it is. So that is a mandatory thing which I need to do as a part of a compliance. But also on top of that, I do a role-based training. Now this nobody asked me to do, but I do it from passion, because in role-based training, each department will have their own set of requirements, and I generally go with this role-based training approach in order to understand the department, because when it's not on a screen or something, it's in-person training. So where I there will be a question answer session, I will understand what the department is, what data they are holding, where they are storing, so that I can also going forward build controls around it, right? So role-based training helps me a lot in understanding the requirement of the organization and the current status of the organization. So I always follow this mandatory versus role-based training approach. And then there are awareness session. Probably you might be knowing 28th Jan is a data privacy day. So we run quizzes over it. Then I send newsletter every month or sometimes twice a month to just an awareness. You should not click here, click there. you should not share certain data, privacy related, and all those things. So I only in previous organization I only used to create all these artifacts and share across. And important is recording. The training records should be present because these records are good to have when there is any regulatory audit or it. So it's better that if you know maintain these training records. Then we have regulatory affairs. In first of all, I try to understand what the applicable regulations now. In the current company I work with, they are located in 7, 8 geographies. So I need to understand all the regular because it's not only about that. Okay, India has a PDPL bill, for example. Okay, India has a PDPL bill. That is not a final thing of it because there is a cyber security law in there. There will be certain privacy clauses. There will be an electronics and telecommunication law. There will be certain privacy clauses. You need to understand all these clauses. Probably the data privacy clause will cover all this, but it's good to know that you have covered all the things and you have not missed out on anything. Okay, so this is what I try to do. Then there is a requirement here in release that you need to register yourself with the data protection authority. So you set up a meeting, go register yourself because it needs to be there in their database that okay, this company is the privacy guy, they should know them. And you need to demonstrate the accountability. When we saw the demonstrate phase in the framework, it clearly told that monitoring and compliance what you are monitoring and the audit reports, probably that can be your accountability to show them that okay, you are running a privacy program, you have trained so much, you are getting so much request, and you are showing the progress. So you need to demonstrate that accountability from time to time basis. Probably a certification might be a good example. For example, ISO 27701 is a data privacy related certification, personal information management system, I think, PIMS. So if you have that ISO standard, then definitely it shows your accountability, right? So try to achieve that certification. If you are a privacy professional, definitely you will not get in a year or so. It will definitely take 2, 3, maybe 4 years to take it because it's a very long process. And then you attend meetings and conferences from the regulators if there is any. I mean, I generally go because the ones here are very innovative and I get to learn a lot. So I'm not sure because when I was in India, I was at a junior position in data privacy, so I was not part of that conferences. My managers used to attend those, but now that I have progressed, so I get to attend. So probably in India or in any European countries, European definitely they have conferences all over, all across. So you need to attend them and understand what the current situations is in the regulations. Then policies, procedures, this we have already talked about, so I'll not take much time over it. Just I have my list of policies. Like, I maintain everything in Excel is my key. So list of policies, which are the existing ones, what needs to be updated, everything is there in my Excel. So everything, you also need to make sure that the policies are up to date because every request it changes, and make sure that you have a version control after every 1 year, 2 years. Decide upon the risk of the policy and make sure that every 1 year you revisit the policy. Then there should be an internal policy. There can't be one standard policy for everyone, correct? Because for internal operations of your organization there will be different set of policy, and for the customer you're facing there will be different set of policy. So make sure you know these differences and uh, apply it accordingly. Then the standard operating procedure, this is also something which I have thought about. And I generally make standard operating procedures so that the team doesn't have to go anywhere, or to they are not in a state of confusion. So I make this 3, 4 pager document where, if let's say privacy by design is that, I tell them that okay, if you are in the privacy by design, you register yourself in the data inventory first. Then you take an assessment if these 7 attributes of personal information is present. If not, then you should have a breach form ready with you just in case if something happens, and all those things. So standard operating procedure is what I make as a part of a DPO activity. Then comes governance. Governance, so we spoke a lot on it. So privacy strategy, it's very important that first thing on the privacy strategies. you make sure the top bodies in the organization, like your board members, probably not the board members, but the CXOs or the directors, they know about your strategy, they agree to the strategy, right? Because their buy-in is also very important. So take those approvals necessarily required. The privacy framework I already showed you, that framework I use and I implement everywhere. Identifying the privacy liaisons also I talked about, that identifying the right person in the right department, and building a privacy team, which probably is very easy in European countries, because they know the depth of data privacy like GDPR. But in Asian countries or in Middle East and Africa, it will be a bit on the difficult side. But yes, if you are handling a lot of customer data, then you will get a privacy team, at least a couple of people. Don't worry about it. Then you have to implement the privacy modules. Now, data inventory, like I said, records of processing activity. This is like a key. Okay, after you identify personal information, no, the list of personal information, and what are PI and SPI. Probably the main focus of yours should not be on any other thing apart from data inventory. Data inventory is the same as personal data discovery. But in data inventory, along with personal data, you will identify the incoming source, outgoing source, security around personal information, purpose for collection, when it will be deleted, how it will be deleted, etc. All this, there is a standard template which is there, and it gets stored in all those, so you know. So this data inventory will be like a bible to you going forward in the data privacy. So you everything about the data you will have in this data inventory, whether to do DPIA or not. In the data subject request, how data inventory will play a major role, because you will know where is the incoming outgoing source. There will be a data mapping sheet in the data inventory itself. In the privacy by design also, the data inventory will pay, uh, you know, it will be playing a very big role, because you will be knowing that sensitive personal data where it is located, and you can enforce the privacy by design controls there first. So all these modules needs to be implemented as a part of a DPO. Perfect. All right. So we were talking about audit. So internal audit we spoke about. Now when it comes to external audit, no? So there are a lot of audit committees. For example, in India, I'm not sure which regulatory, because I'm I'm not sure. Okay, let me give you an example of UAE only. We have Dubai Health Authority here, DHA. We have we have Department of Health, DOH. There are two bodies here, DHA, DOH. They have their own set of regulations. Okay, they do their audit. So they have their own standard. First of all, there is a standard defined by them, that these are the standard you should meet. So that becomes part of an external audit, that are you meeting all these standards, yes, no. And then there is a regulatory audit, wherein the regulators come to the organization to audit. So you have to be prepared from all the audit standpoint. Now audit, it comes at a very later stage, honestly, because build phase is what you will be spending most of your time on. But audit will generally be a part and parcel of your life, because you will also be, doing a mini audit of vendors, like the due diligence, I would say, not the audit, due diligence. So that is also a day-to-day activity. Like if your new vendor is coming in, okay, just check what is their, standard in the market, how they are processing. Probably you might send them a questionnaire and all those things and get it rectified. So it's a kind of a mini audit you do. So audit also is a very integral part. And last but not the least, stakeholder engagement. Now, stakeholder engagement, like I said, change management is the most important thing you, or the difficult thing you will be encountered in your entire career of privacy, because people are very reluctant. People are sitting there since 10, 15, 20, 25 years, and probably they will question, no, why now? It was not there earlier. So probably you might have to make your case and all. So it becomes quite interesting role, because If it is coming from a top-down approach, you don't have to worry at all. But if it is in a small company and you have to convince people, so change managers. So don't let go that factor of people, because people in people process technology, people play the major role. Is what I've seen, at least in the privacy side. So do a proper engagement, or have a good rapport with them. There will be a lot of ad hoc privacy requests which comes to me, like do this thing, do an audit, review this document, or review any any requirement. For example, one day I was getting this request to whether, in a media agency, that probably should we use Jira or something on and should we upload personal information. So all such small requests will keep on coming. So be ready for all of those. And uh, and uh, let and there will be also a lot of privacy management tool. Probably if your company is rich, you will get the opportunity to find out the right set of tool, do a POC on them, and probably onboard them. So you will be handling a lot of tool as well. Okay, so that is on the DPO activities part. Let's talk about the important topic, career opportunities, for which you guys have been waiting for, I'm sure. So, what are the career opportunities? So, these are the few. I'm not sure that all people come from all these backgrounds, but just to give you an overview. So, from a legal background, for example, you are starting new from a college. You are uh, you just passed. You thinking what to do. Data privacy is found your newfound interest. Then, I would recommend. Go for a CIPPE certification or something of that sort and build your career. So, in at a starting position for a legal person, probably you will be a privacy analyst. Okay, here your day-to-day role will be following the commands, the following the directions of the DPO. If you are, let's say, 3 or 4 years experience, probably you might get an individual role to manage all the privacy related activities. Now, this is not seen as a thing which the regulation says, right? In GDPR, that DPO should report to the highest authority. Probably in 3 years, you might not report to the highest authority, which ideally should be the case, but it's fine. But still, you will do a lot of things and lot of decision making, and in 3 years as well, and from a legal background, because you will be reviewing contracts, which are the most time consuming thing in a data privacy professional's life, I would say. But on the contrary, you get to learn a lot once you, because you understand all the different backgrounds, and you try to map the requirements to those backgrounds. Okay, if you come from an IT background, probably it will be an easier path, easier road for you, because you already know the people process technology part of the organization. So technology, you know what data is stored where, or probably you might have a good fair knowledge over it, because 80% or 90% of the data is on IT only. It's not on hard copies or so you will have a good overview of this. And if you are into, I would say, which field, data privacy, data um, information security side, then information security, or you are a data analyst, or you are a data scientist, probably you can also come to data privacy field, and it has a lot of good scope, a lot of good opportunities. So IT people I've seen, they become, after like 3 to 5 years of privacy experience, probably they jump into the director role directly, because 4 to 5, because company they will know everybody, and that will, boost their chances of privacy related, because privacy is a upcoming thing now. And when it comes to senior positions now, uh, there is a shared responsibilities. Okay, so like if you are a director of a company, or if you are at a senior managerial role, any managerial role, probably an additional role of data privacy comes into picture, but that going forward might become your full-time role. what I have seen the trend is you know the company well if you are 6 7 years in the role, and probably talking to regulators and all those people, it is pretty easier. And last is the certifications. So certifications is what even Infosec Train provides. But there are also like certifications from IAPP. So you guys can, you might be knowing CIPP, CIPM, and all those good certifications. So there's so what we are doing is we are giving an online data protection training. So we are also providing the data protection officer online training. It's a 32 hour training. It's led by me only, and we are planning on a lot of case studies, quizzes. There is a lot of broad topics which we discuss, right? Standard contractual clauses, then how the data inventory will be done. Data inventory itself is a 1 hour long session, I feel, because it contains all the nitty gritties on what data will be captured, then how the consent management structures are built, like how I have built in all the media, insurance, and banking industries. After that, we speak on the what was that, training and education and awareness, what training content should be there, how you can leverage the role based model, how can you make the most out of it, and then monitoring and compliance, how the reporting will should look like, what should be the key, who should be the key stakeholders, and etc etc. I will also help you in making the resume if you need be. Resume building not that difficult, but yes, there are certain keywords which needs to be there as a part of your resume and shouldn't miss if you are planning for a career in data privacy. And definitely career counseling. Career counseling is more about one-on-one session, understanding what you have learned all your life, and probably if you want to make your path in data privacy, then how we as a company can help you in achieving those goals. On top of that, like I said, on my LinkedIn I have 2500 LinkedIn connections, but 80% of them are data privacy, and all of them are always looking for a privacy. Yesterday only I gave contact of 2 people and they were hired today. So that's a very good trend which is going on in Middle East, I would say. I'm not very sure on the India. I'm sure it will be also very good in India in coming months. But in Middle East, definitely it's a very, very good opportunity if you are planning to move here soon and cut on your taxes. So it's a very good opportunity here. So that's about it today, and I think